Hi dears, welcome to our next class, and in this class we are going to deal with a very simple and a small poem, Mirror, which was there in the collection of Sylvia Plath's poem. So this is the work in which we are going to deal in this class. Now about Sylvia Plath. As a literature student, when we hear the name Sylvia Plath, suddenly what comes to our mind is a oven, a blast, and a 30-year-old young lady, right? We cannot just forget Sylvia Plath as you have studied Daddy, her work, one of her, it was not that famous, but with the theme, it was really celebrated after by the critics, actually. And that was there in your UG syllabus also. So she is actually familiar to you people, Sylvia Plath. And she was one of the most dynamic and admired poets of the 20th century. Yeah, of course, we know that she took her life at the age of 30, and she had that much works that done within this small age, at the age of within the age of 20. She was not only an American poet but also a novelist and a short story writer also. Okay, and she was also credited mm, with the literary style of confessional poetry. And I hope you people know what is confessional poetry. Do you remember? It is a style of poetry that emerged in United States during the 1950s and 1960s. And it is also considered as a branch or a part of postmodernism. And this is confession. From the word confession itself, it is understood, right? So it has been described as poetry of the personal, or to that person who writes the poem. So it is just focusing on I in the sense the poet, maybe. Okay. And so about the individual experience of that person, the psyche, the personal trauma, and so much of the sexuality, everything related to the particular person. So that type of a poem is known as confessional poetry. I hope you have studied it, but I'm just giving you a gist on what is confessional poetry. So she was one of the main exponent of confessional poetry, and we have so much of collections like the Colossus and other poems, one of the famous collection. Another collection of poems is Ariel, and there is also a semi-autobiographical novel by Sylvia Plath, and the name is The Bell Jar. Okay, and that was just published before her death, and her death was in 1963, February 11th, 1963, and this was just published just before her death. And in 1981, the collected poems were published. Okay, and because there was so much of unpublished works, and all those were published after her death. And she was also awarded posthumously a Pulitzer Prize in poetry in 1982. 1982, she was awarded, and that too posthumously. And this is all about the, just we can say, introduction on the author. And Sylvia Plath is not at all a person who what who was not there in the syllabus. So you might be knowing about her more, about Sylvia Plath, right? So you might be knowing about the relationship with Ted Hughes, her husband. They got married in 1956, and that was a broken marriage also. And when we go deep to her life, we will come to know about her disease. That was, uh, she had clinical depression, and that was certified by her psychiatrist after her death. And that is because of the trauma in which she had during her childhood till her death. And so we can say that uh, it started from her childhood, because when she was just 8 years old, her father died after a long illness, and this early loss of love and affection that haunted her very badly. And what happened is, it is in some sources, it is said that at the age of 10, actually, when we come to know in general that she had a attempt of suicide in 19, and then in the 30th age, which was a success. And but in some sources that I got, that she attempted suicide before at the age of 10, after her father's death, by cutting her throat. So this tendency was there from a very child itself, and that was the starting of her depression. That is actually a disease. It is clinical depression is a disease, and that took her to the death. So um, at the time of her father's death itself, Plath began writing poetry and short fiction and all, and her works actually won several newspaper contests, and in at the time of 1950s and all. The first story that she sold was "And Summer Will Not Come Again," and that was sold to 17 magazine. And she wrote many other short stories. The second one was Sunday at the Mintons, and that was one of the fiction which was won by Sylvia Plath. And we can see that she started her career in the in her early childhood itself. Okay, and I told you about the autobiographical novel, The Bell Jar. And all these are the extra points that you have to keep in mind when studying Sylvia Plath. Next is the poem, which is a very small poem of just 18 lines. I'll be attaching this poem in your material. Don't worry about the poem, or otherwise you can Google it. It's a very simple poem, and I'll just recite the poem once. Mirror. I am silver and exact. I have no preconceptions. Whatever I see, I swallow immediately, just as it is, unmisted by love or dislike. I am not cruel, only truthful. The eye of a little god, four cornered. Most of the time, I meditate on the opposite wall. It is pink with speckles. I have looked at it so long. I think it is part of my heart, but it flickers. Faces and darkness separate us over and over. Now I am a lake. A woman bends over me, searching my reaches for what she really is. Then she turns to those liars, the candles or the moon. I see her back and reflect it faithfully. She rewards me with tears and an agitation of hands. I am important to her. She comes and goes. Each morning it is her face that replaces the darkness. In me she has drowned a young girl, and in me an old woman rises toward her day after day like a terrible fish. So, with this poem itself, maybe you people come to know what is confessional poem or confessional poetry, because so much of I is there. And this poem, A Mirror, describes its existence and its owner who grows older as the mirror watches. in the last line itself, it is actually seen. In me, there was a young girl, and in me, an old woman, right? So, with that itself, we can understand. So, in the beginning, the mirror, he or she himself is describing itself as a silver and exact, and it forms no judgment, and it's saying that whatever it get, it swallows without any change in it. And so we can see that uh, there is there is no alterations. Whatever it get, it just swallows and give the image back. So what, that is a mirror, right? We all know that. But here is something which is called creativity of Sylvia Plath, to show that we the creative people think more than normal people. So the mirror is saying that I'm not cruel but only truthful. Why is using that is that it is reflecting the correct, or the real image, right? It is reflecting the real image. We always say, right, when we look and when we see our face ugly, we'll say, oh, this mirror is not good because it's showing my ugly face. Obviously it show the real image, that is what is happening, but we mutter like that. So it considered itself as a four-cornered eye of a god which sees everything for it was it. And most of the time, the mirror looks across the empty room and meditates on the pink speckled wall across from it. And it has a look that wall for so long. And he's saying that the mirror, it is saying that it is a part of my heart. That wall is a part of my heart. And the mirror then imagine itself as a lake. It imagine itself as a lake, and it's saying that a woman looks into it trying to discern who she really is by gazing at her reflection. So maybe the woman is gazing at the mirror for a long time, and so she's thinking about who is she. So sometimes the women prefer to look at her in a candlelight or a moonlight, but these are liars, because she's saying that the mirror is saying that only the mirror gives a faithful representation of herself. And because of this honesty, the woman cries and wrings her hand. Why? Because in the beginning, when the lady, or when the woman was looking at the mirror, she was a young girl or a young lady, and now a old woman, and that's why she is not ready to accept it. Okay, and over the years, the woman has drowned as a young girl in the mirror, and now the reflection of an old woman is seen, and the old woman rises toward her out of a mirror like a terrible fish. Again, a comparison, we can see there is a terrible fish. So the central idea of this work, of this poem, is man's tendency to dismiss the inevitable truth about his declining age and waning attractiveness. So that is considered as the central idea of the poem, because the mirror actually reflects the true image of the woman to her, but she is not ready to accept, because she is not no longer is an attractive young girl. So she turns to those liars, the candles or the moons, and she is not ready to accept that she is old now. So it is a human nature to dismiss the truth about the ugly and unpleasant aspects. That's what I told you later. Before I told you, right? That when we look at the mirror, when we see our ugly face, we'll say, this mirror is not good. That is why. Show me your mirror, let me see in your mirror, right? We used to say that. That is because we are not ready to accept the truth, the unpleasant aspects of our life. So that is what is happening. So the poet seems to be suggesting to us to come to terms with the reality of our lives. So that is what Sylvia Plath is actually trying to suggest the readers, that to accept the reality of their lives, and that accepting will help to have a better future and to overcome unnecessary frustration. But what happened to Sylvia Plath was really sad. She could only write this from her imagination, from her creativity, but she couldn't bring that to her life. The literary devices in which used here in this poem is metaphor, personification, allusion, and imagery. Personification, of course, from the first line itself we can see that so much of I is there for a non-living thing, and introducing itself as a living thing in which is have all the person's attributes. So it's understood, and it is in the form of direct metaphors, because I am silver and exact, alluding to a mirror, right? And again we can see now I am a lake. So what these objects she chose is actually she or he, actually here Sylvia Plath is considering mirror as a lady, because the image most probably which is reflecting and looking into the mirror is a lady, and so here Sylvia Plath is considering mirror as a lady, and so we can use a she there. And the metaphors is direct metaphors, because whatever comparisons she bring, like a silver and lake and all, is giving a direct reflection, right? So the metaphor is a direct metaphor in which she is using. Okay. And imagery actually occurs in the lines of, most of the time I meditate on the opposite wall, it is pink with speckles, I have looked at it so long, I think it is a part of my heart, by prickles, phases and darkness separate us over and over. So these are the lines which shows imagery as it is, because it is important to remember the speaker here is a mirror, and the readers get the visual image of non-stop image that the mirror sees because of its position in the room. And the faces, the darkness of the night appears, highlighting the course of time which may feel the monotonous. And we can also see that the literary device allusion is also used here to show that is on the opposite wall. So the reference of an image of what the reference of an image of a cave dwellers who could see the shadows and on opposite wall because of the light of fire. So because the content of the poem is another aspect altogether. So when it is taken as a whole, what happens is the descriptions of mere objects are also so intense and so specifically chosen that readers cannot help but notice that the concept of the work. Okay. And when we come to the tone of the poem, the speaker develops the tone. Actually, it started with a detached tone, and it portrays in an accepting tone at the end of the work. At first, it is completely detached. The mirror is completely detached from the person, and by the end of the poem, we can see that the mirror is accepting. So an accepting mode or accepting tone is coming by the end of the work. And here the speaker of the poem is the mirror itself. So as an overall, we can see that a mirror is a melancholy and even a bitter poem that exemplifies the tension between inner and outer selves. And it also indicates the feminine problem. Problem means most probably a problem, and it is considered as a feminine problem too, of aging and losing one's beauty. And this poem is also considered as a free verse, and it doesn't have any fixed metrical pattern, and rather than the rhythm and meters, it is just to project the emotions of the poet, to evoke the reader. So it's just a two stanza poem of 9 lines. That means altogether 18 lines. I hope you understood. Thank you so much.